Hello and welcome. You are watching World Business Report here on News9 Live. I am Krishna Kumar. We begin with Wall Street, which plunged amidst an abrupt sell-off of stocks, and that disrupted the recent rally and sparked fears of economic volatility in the United States of America. Investors were stunned as stocks kept tumbling, rattling the core of Wall Street. Take a look at this detailed report from Reuters.
U.S. stocks closed lower on Wednesday after an abrupt mid-afternoon nosedive, ending an impressive rally driven by falling interest rates and the Federal Reserve's dovish turn. The Dow shed 1.3%, while the S&P 500 and NASDAQ each lost 1.5%. During the session, the S&P got within 0.5% of its all-time closing high. Reaching a new closing high would have confirmed the benchmark index had been in a bull market since hitting its bear market floor in October of 2022. The index is now more than 2% below its record closing high. Stocks have rallied on the back of the Fed last week, signaling it had reached the end of its tightening cycle, while opening the door for rate cuts in the coming year. Still, Ross Mayfield, investment strategy analyst at Baird, suggests caution for 2024.
We still think that even if the Fed is cutting rates, the floor under rates is much higher than it was in the previous cycle. That raises the bar for company performance and profitability. I think sticking with a quality tilt across sector, across asset class, whether in fixed income or equities, is going to be something that's really important over the next couple of years.
In company news, shares of General Mills slid more than 3.5% after the packaged food company cut its sales forecast. Fedex shares slid 12% after the delivery firm missed quarterly profit estimates and cut its full-year revenue forecast. Rival UPS dipped 3%. Alphabet gained more than 1% after the company announced it was restructuring Google's ad sales unit. And memory chipmaker Micron Technology, which closed down more than 4%, gained 5% in after-hours trading after forecasting quarterly revenue above Wall Street estimates.
Right, that was Micron, but there was a stock that tumbled hard along with all of the stocks on Wall Street, and that was the stock of Fedex. Fedex's struggles are being highlighted after its earnings witnessed a significant disappointment as well. And investors reacted to those disappointing earnings by selling off the stock, prompting a significant drop in the logistics giant's value. Take a look at this.
FedEx shares tumbled in after-hours trade Tuesday. They fell close to 10% after the delivery firm cut its outlook for the year and reported profits that fell far short of estimates. Adjusted earnings for the quarter to the end of November did actually jump by 23% to just over $1 billion, but analysts had expected much better. The company said future earnings would be pressured by a volatile global economy, which was sapping customer demand. It now expects full-year revenue to decline by a low single-digit percentage, when it had previously said results would be roughly flat. The company's air-based Express unit was a big drag over the latest quarter. Operating income there dropped 60%, partly as the US Postal Service shifted more packages to lower-cost ground transportation. FedEx is now trying to renegotiate its contract with the post office. The company's own ground division did much better, moving goods for Walmart and others. Income there rose by more than a half. But the overall numbers left traders disappointed and added to signs that the coming holiday season could prove lackluster for retailers and shippers alike. Shares in FedEx arch-rival UPS also fell following Tuesday's news.
Right, away from FedEx, we will take this to the global economic weakness, which is being heightened along with FedEx's struggles. And we have an expert voice coming in on that front. Ross Mayfield, the investment strategist analyst at Baird, who has warned of FedEx's global impact and that highlighting a fragile global economy.
FedEx and some of the big transportation stocks are often seen as barometers of global economic health. And so when one misses earnings or when one, highlights a struggle, it can be a harbinger of something out there. I think what we're seeing today is that while the US has remained resilient and the recovery has been incredible and the labor market is tight, the global economy as a whole is not nearly as healthy. Whether it's Europe, whether it's emerging markets, there's been a much bigger struggle to recover from COVID. There's been bigger issues getting inflation down, and there's been less stimulus out of some of these countries. So I think the US market, and we can have kind of a home country bias here, has been so resilient, and it's been such an incredible story that it's kind of obscured weakness in Europe and weakness in the emerging countries, weakness in China, which has not had a reopening in the way that the rest of the world has. I think you could be seeing that in some of the global transportation names today.
Right, keeping it with the U.S., but moving away from Wall Street to the highest court in the state of Colorado, which has just ruled that former President Donald Trump will not be eligible to run for U.S. presidency in the upcoming elections. And that decision stemmed from his involvement in the 2021 Capitol riots. And Trump is expected to face a challenge at the U.S. Supreme Court soon. Take a look at this report.
Donald Trump has been disqualified from serving as U.S. president and kicked out of the presidential primary election in Colorado next year. The state's highest court made the historic decision on Tuesday over the former president's role in instigating violence against the government in the Capitol attack by his supporters on January 6, 2021. The 4-3 ruling by the Colorado Supreme Court was based on a rarely used provision of the U.S. Constitution. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment bars officials who have engaged in insurrection from holding office. Trump is now the first presidential candidate in history to be disqualified from the White House under that rule. The majority justices acknowledged the judgment was uncharted territory, but said, quote, "We do not reach these conclusions lightly." Trump's campaign said they will appeal the ruling at the U.S. Supreme Court, calling it flawed and undemocratic, while Trump accused the Democrats of election interference at a campaign rally in Iowa.
Crooked Joe Biden and the far-left lunatics are desperate to stop us by any means necessary. They are willing to violate the U.S. Constitution at levels never seen before in order to win this election.
The case was not brought forward by Biden, but a group of Colorado voters backed by a nonprofit called Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. In a statement, the nonprofit said the court's decision is, quote, "not only historic and justified, but is necessary to protect the future of democracy in our country." The lawsuit is seen as a test case for a wider effort to strike Trump off state ballots under the 14th Amendment. Tuesday's ruling overturns a lower court's judgment in Colorado that concluded Trump did engage in insurrection, but that, as president, Trump was not an officer of the United States who could be disqualified under the provision. It now sets the stage for the U.S. Supreme Court to potentially consider whether he's eligible across all 50 states to serve as president again. Half of the judges that make up the top court's conservative majority are Trump appointees.
And keeping it still with the U.S., buy now, pay later loans have emerged as a festive risk factor. As consumers embrace convenient payment models, experts have warned of escalating debt hazards amid seasonal shopping sprees.
With U.S. credit card balances at record levels and defaults rising, more shoppers than ever this holiday season are tapping buy now, pay later services. But consumer advocates are raising red flags as cash-strapped shoppers add months-long loans with rates as high as 36%, the maximum lenders can charge in many states. By using providers such as Klarna, Affirm, and PayPal, shoppers can purchase anything from a marked-down $3,200 Jill Sander leather bag at luxury retailer Farfetch to groceries from Walmart and get the merchandise before it's fully paid for. Even Walmart, the world's biggest retailer in 2021, ditched its layaway plan in favor of buy now, pay later options through Affirm. Such providers told Reuters they are giving shoppers alternatives to high-cost credit cards and are only extending loans to people they believe are willing and able to repay. But consumer advocates warn that such loans nudge some shoppers to splurge on jewelry, trendy clothing, video game consoles, or appliances that they otherwise could not afford. And credit analysts are also registering concern at a time when higher costs for housing and food, as well as mortgages and car loans, are squeezing budgets.
Time now to shift our focus to the world of artificial intelligence. From an uncanny encounter for Russian President Vladimir Putin to bots which are on the campaign trail and getting political. Take a look at some of the biggest stories making headlines in the world of artificial intelligence.
From when Putin met his double to how bots are gearing up for the U.S. presidential election.
And I'm an artificial intelligence volunteer for...
This is Generation AI.
Pennsylvania.
Vladimir Putin has met his AI twin. At his annual news conference, the Russian leader was posed a question by a digital version of himself. Aptly enough, the clone asked Putin if he had a lot of lookalikes. Bots are taking to the U.S. campaign trail too. Democratic candidate for Congress in Pennsylvania, Shemaine Daniels, is using an AI-powered robocaller to contact voters.
My name is Ashley, and
She says the bot, dubbed Ashley, doesn't just recite a script, but can tailor its approach to each individual.
If the person answering is kind of going in a direction that's inappropriate, Ashley has the ability to kind of end that conversation. But on our end, we've made sure that she can't tell lies about me. So whatever she shares will be something that is true.
Google says it will limit how much its Bard chatbot has to say about next year's U.S. presidential election. The restrictions will kick in early next year. Facebook owner Meta has already said it will bar political campaigns from using its AI tools. Pope Francis has been thinking about AI too. He has called for a legally binding international treaty to regulate it. The Catholic leader warned of a technological dictatorship threatening human existence. And bankrupt pharmacy chain Rite Aid has been banned from using AI facial recognition to watch customers for 5 years. U.S. watchdogs say it used the tech to identify shoplifters, but wrongly tagged some innocent shoppers as criminals.
In the UK, a significant plunge in inflation has ignited speculation on what the Bank of England is going to do. Is it going to cut interest rates soon? The drastic drop in inflation strengthens predictions of a potential Bank of England rate cut. The only question is, will the Bank of England oblige, and more importantly, what is the way forward for interest rates and the signals coming from Bank of England for the rest of the world?
British inflation plunged in November to its lowest rate in more than 2 years. Official data out Wednesday show the annual rate of increase in the Consumer Prices Index dropped to 3.9% from October's 4.6%. Transport, particularly motor fuels, was the biggest contributor to the fall. The reading was below all forecasts in a Reuters poll of economists. Key measures watched closely by Britain's central bank, including core and services inflation, also dropped. The numbers left investors betting on the Bank of England cutting interest rates next year, perhaps as soon as May. British inflation is now closer to other rich nations and matches that of France. But consumer prices have risen since 2020 by a fifth, more than any other group of 7 advanced economy. One leading analyst said Wednesday's numbers showed strong evidence disinflationary pressures are building in the UK. A much smaller rise in food and drink prices than in November last year also helped, although those prices are still 27% higher than 2 years ago. Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt said the data showed inflation pressures were being removed from the economy, while the opposition Labour Party said people were worse off after 13 years of Conservative government.
We will be taking a very short breather here on World Business Report. We'll be back with lots more on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
जब हम करेंगे तो पता लग ही जाएगा। सलमान खान का करेंगे, मारेंगे ही जाएंगे। जोधपुर में मारेंगे तो पता लग जाएगा।
this is someone who is sitting inside our jails and is still very obviously and openly running, and possibly the largest organized criminal operation in the country.
स्टूडेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऑफ पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी में सोपू का एक्टिंग प्रेसिडेंट टाइप भी रहा है.
He was a troublemaker, getting into fights with people, not coming to the class.
As on date, it appears that Lawrence gang is the most important, the prominent gang. Gangs here in Punjab, they are intimidated.
Today he is India's most dangerous gangster, and India's prisons are apparently no bar to how Bishnoi runs India's largest criminal empire.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
You are watching World Business Report, and European Automobile Manufacturers Association has reported nearly half of new cars in the European Union being electric vehicles. The surging adoption of EVs is a pivotal shift towards sustainable transportation in the European market, and that could send signals for greater adoption for the rest of the world.
Electric vehicle sales have sped up in the EU. Sales of electric cars were almost half of all new passenger car registrations between January and November this year. The data was released by the European Automobile Manufacturers Association, or ACEA, on Wednesday. It showed electrified vehicles made up more than 47.6% of all new passenger car registrations in the EU as of November, up from 43% in the same period last year. Registrations of fully electric cars rose 16.4% from a year earlier to 144,378 vehicles. That was despite a drop of more than a fifth in Germany, Europe's biggest EV market. Both Volkswagen and Renault registrations rose in November. Tesla recorded a jump of almost 45% in the same month, making up nearly 22% of fully electric car registrations in the EU. However, some car makers and analysts have warned EV demand has slowed over past months. Volkswagen said in October demand for EVs was not developing as expected, and Mercedes-Benz warned of a brutal EV market of heavy price cuts and supply chain issues. The ACEA also had a warning earlier this month. It said Europe's EV sector risked falling behind other regions without a strong EU industrial strategy. It pointed towards China's dominance of the supply chain and US incentives for its automakers.
Meanwhile, it's the end of an era for Toshiba shares as they got delisted after 74 years, signaling a transformation in the industry. It's a momentous move as Toshiba bids farewell to the market after a long-standing presence in the market, and it reflects dynamic changes as well. More details on that in this report.
It was a stalwart of the Tokyo Stock Exchange for 74 years, but Wednesday saw Toshiba shares delisted following a buyout by investors. That came after a decade of upheaval and scandal that brought chaos to one of Japan's biggest brands. It's now owned by a group led by private equity firm Japan Industrial Partners. Other members include financial services firm Orix and chipmaker Rome. The $14 billion takeover puts Toshiba back in Japanese hands after years of battles with overseas activist investors. That had paralysed the giant conglomerate, which makes everything from batteries to robots and nuclear power stations. Now it's very unclear what shape the firm will take under its new owners. But analysts bet Chief Executive Taro Shimada, who is staying on, will focus on high-margin digital services. Toshiba is widely expected to start divesting some assets. It's also teamed up with Rome to invest billions in new chip production capabilities. One Toshiba watcher said the firm could have a bright future if it got rid of its low-margin units and freed up its engineers to innovate.
Away from Toshiba, shaking up global whisky traditions and practices is the rise of Indian whisky. That's right, whisky made in India that's reshaping the global whisky industry and challenging conventional distillation methods and redefining standards as well. Take a look at this.
India loves whisky. It's the nation's favourite alcohol. And now that passion may be about to shake up liquor brands. Because India is fast going from whisky consumer to producer. Abrupt Distilleries is one local firm with big plans. According to the company, it's nearly trebled its production capacity and is still struggling to meet demand. Managing Director Rakshit Jagdale says the whole sector is booming.
Frankly, whether it's Amrut, whether it's Rampur or Paul John or Indri or name it, we don't have enough quantity today of matured malt whisky to be sold as single malt whisky. So it's a nice problem to have.
The boom comes as Indian brands gain recognition. This year one was named Best in Show at a World Whisky Awards. Also helping are increasingly affluent Indian consumers, many of whom were prompted to try new drinks while cooped up during lockdowns. It's all a shock to big names like Pernod Ricard and Diageo, which have long dominated the whisky trade. They're responding with Indian-made liquor of their own. Last week, Pernod Ricard debuted its Longitude 77 whisky. Kartik Mohindra is the company's chief marketing officer there.
We hope, not only us, but also some of the other players in the Indian single malt business, to put India on the global map when it comes to provenance-led whisky making.
The Indian newcomers are competing on quality, not price. They sell for amounts comparable to global brands like Glenlivet. And the strategy seems to be working. Data from drinks market analysts show sales of Indian single malts soared 144% over 2021 to 22. The country's $33 billion spirits market suddenly has a very local flavour.
Well, away from whiskey to the world of entertainment and actors, where Penelope Cruz has shared her thoughts on cars. She says that she's absolutely not interested in them. Take a look at this.
People like me who don't know anything about car, and I'm not really interested. I mean, I really appreciate the beauty of a Ferrari. I really appreciate it, but I don't like speed, and I as the audience, I would love to know that with this movie, it's not just about the way that Michael shot the races is incredible. It's incredible, and everything is so real, and it's just like, what a filmmaker. But the movie is so much more than that, and it's so many layers, and it's about characters, and it's about family and relationships.
So what do?
Win the Mille Miglia, Enzo, or you are out of business.
I try to use my imagination in every way possible to kind of become a cultural anthropologist and to recreate the physical places exactly the way they were with signage, which isn't that difficult because Modena is completely unchanged. And when you see the Ferrari house, that's the real Ferrari house. When you're in the family mausoleum, that's the actual Ferrari mausoleum.
Go beat the hell out of them.
That's right. If you're looking to impress Penelope Cruz with cars, ain't going to happen. But away from cars to the festive season that we're in the middle of, and Santa Claus is bringing that festive joy to the Eiffel Tower Christmas market in Paris. Take a look at this. And these scenes are enthralling both the young and the old. Santa's heartwarming presence has sparked joy and excitement among visitors to the Eiffel Tower during this season. Sitting at 59 meters above the ground level, this Christmas market is the highest in the world. The Eiffel Tower Christmas market runs up until the 15th of January and is open during the tower's opening hours only.
You just feel the Christmas spirit. Everyone's happy, everyone's in a good mood, everyone's enjoying themselves. Really feel, the atmosphere over here. It's really wonderful.
Well, as if the Eiffel Tower on its own is not special enough, it's become extra special for Christmas. And keeping it with Christmas, but taking it away from Paris and France and Europe all the way east to Japan. And Japan's capital, Tokyo, which welcomed Christmas with sparkling light displays and beautiful decorations that are on your screens at the moment. Tokyo City is shining bright with these twinkling lights and decorations. Tokyo's urban landscape has transformed into a breathtaking winter wonderland that's captivating one and all. And remember, it's not only Christmas lights that is enchanting spectators, but also the typical Japanese neon lights and the special illumination with which Japan is used to welcome the winter season. And that's all we have time for on this edition of World Business Report. Thank you so much for watching. This is Krishna Kumar signing off.
The scale of the attack was something that we were surprised at. David Hadley was a double agent. The Americans did not want him to be fully exposed, so all that he probably shared with the Americans was not shared with us in terms of intelligence. If we had that, I'm sure that we would have been able to deal with the situation far better.
This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Bangalore traffic is an example of something that has gone wrong with our system.
We have more than 50 flyovers in Bangalore city. If flyover is a solution to traffic problem, Bangalore should not have traffic problem.
According to TomTom Traffic Index 2022, Bangalore is ranked as the second worst city in the world when it comes to traffic.